Ready to hit the road in 2025 and looking for ideas where to go?
Whether you're looking for coastal views, rugged mountains, or wide open deserts, we've got you covered.
We're Matt and Cheryl, and we live in Utah, and we love road trips, and we do several around the West every year.
So grab your keys, pack your bags, and let's give you our best ideas for 2025.
All right, now let's kick it off with our home state here in the Utah Mighty Five. So this is a road trip through all 5 of Utah's national parks. That's Zion Canyon, Bryce Canyon, Capitol Reef National Park, Canyonlands National Park, and Arches National Park.
And this is such an amazing trip because you get to see so many cool things, including towering red rock walls. I think Zion's the most famous for that, but Capitol Reef also has them. It's very cool.
That's true. Now, Bryce Canyon has hoodoos. You can hike through them, and they have little archways that you can walk through. And it's just, I can't even believe that we're allowed to go down there and walk through them with the National Park Service, but the hiking trails are great there.
All right, the next is you're going to see arches. Now, of course, you're going to see arches in Arches National Park, but there are arches and bridges in some of these other parks too.
And then in Canyonlands National Park, you're going to see these vast, empty spaces and canyons that just go forever, which to me just keeps drawing me back into it. So I feel like each of them has their different look, and then I kind of feel like Capitol Reef has a mixture of all of them with the arches and the canyons and the vast empty spaces, and so that's pretty cool.
What is so crazy about visiting these 5 Utah national parks in one trip, they actually change from park to park. They each look different from one another, and you don't really pick up on that unless you visit them all in one trip. Then you really start seeing how different they are from each other. And we wanted to share just a couple of our favorite experiences on this trip. And within Capitol Reef, there is this Grand Wash hike that is flat. It's like where the river used to be within these towering walls. It's not very crowded. It really surprised me how just amazing it was for like no one knowing about it. And of course, in Capitol Reef, you can also get pie from the Gifford House, which you really can't do in other national parks.
And maybe my favorite experience to share is that I once rode a horse down into the hoodoos in Bryce Canyon. This is just one of my favorite memories of all time. You wander around through the spires, through the hoodoos and all that, and it is just so cool, like the perfect Old West experience, riding through the desert and through those formations.
So how long does this trip take? We say at least 1 day in each park. So you can kind of squish this into like 5 or 6 days. We did it in 8. Great trip. We love it.
All right, up next is the best of Wyoming road trip. So this is Yellowstone and Grand Teton. And even though it's only these 2 parks, it is a legit road trip because these 2 parks are so big.
The first thing you're going to see are the very famous geysers of Yellowstone, like Old Faithful, Grand Prismatic. Yellowstone has half of the world's geysers, and you can see them all in one spot. It's amazing.
The next thing is the canyons. You're going to see plenty of canyons when you visit here. Yellowstone has several, well, it has the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, which has yellow walls. That's amazing. But there's several other canyons within the park. In both of the parks, just to get to them, you're going to be driving through some incredible canyons just to get there.
The next thing you're going to see are some kick-butt mountains. I gotta say, the Tetons are the best mountains around, maybe Banff, but the Tetons are amazing. And you can see them everywhere you go. Whenever I leave Grand Teton, I have mountain withdrawal because I get so spoiled looking at them the whole time I'm there. And you can see them anywhere in the park. They're just jagged, unique, beautiful, amazing.
Then the last thing we want to cover that you're going to see here is the wildlife, of course. Like these are 2 of the iconic parks to go to for wildlife. Buffalo, moose, elk, and of course, bears. Lots of bears. It's a safari to go visit these parks.
Something that stands out to me when I think about my memories of visiting Grand Teton are the photo opportunities. Like every morning, if you go to that molten barn, you will see dozens of people there taking their pictures with the sun hitting the barn just right. Then you drive to Schwabacher Landing or Oxbow Bend, and you just have these incredible views. I mean, Grand Teton is scenic everywhere you go, but those spots especially just breathtaking.
You know, one thing that's really special about visiting these parks is every trip to them is very different because of the wildlife, and you never know what you're going to see. Oh, we have so many stories, but the one that I want to share is last year when we went to Yellowstone, we stopped over at the river, just to kind of like hang out by the river there, and we saw like a bison herd that started running towards us, and we thought, okay, no big deal, we have a river in front of us, you know. Well, they hopped in the river, crossed over the river, and kept on running. And I had never seen anything like it. That just, wow, what a vivid memory. Just seeing all those bison with the babies swimming in there. Yeah, that was really cool. Okay, so how long to spend at Yellowstone and Grand Teton? about a week. So typically we say 4 days in Yellowstone, 2 to 3 days in Grand Teton. That's a pretty good time. There are several things actually nearby, like cities that you might want to visit, like Jackson and Cody and stuff.
Virginia City.
Yeah, Virginia City. So you could add a little bit more, but we typically say about a week for Yellowstone.
Road trip I did, number 3, circling around the Grand Canyon. Seriously, this is like one of the best kept secrets around. Everyone thinks about the South Rim, but there's like 4 distinct areas you can visit. South Rim, North Rim, Page area, and like the Grand Canyon West area with like the Hoover Dam. I mean, this is a big trip with lots of fun things to do.
Okay, so what you're going to see here is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life, really. I think the only thing more amazing than the Grand Canyon that I've ever seen is the solar eclipse, which just blew my mind. But in terms of natural stuff that we see around the West here, Grand Canyon, I absolutely love it. I think it's amazing. I mean, it's bigger than you can even comprehend. And we always say when we look at it, it looks like a picture. It's just so big and amazing. It looks like a photo.
Next up is the Hoover Dam, which Matt should be talking about the Hoover Dam.
Yes. So the Hoover Dam, the Hoover Dam is located in the Grand Canyon West region, and it forms Lake Mead. And at the time it was built, it was the biggest dam in the world. They do tours of the dam. They'll take you down to it. Just the canyon that it's in is pretty cool. But it's really kind of like the beginning of the Grand Canyon.
My favorite childhood memory, it was going to Lake Powell every summer. This huge body of water, man-made. It's awesome for recreation. We took a boat tour out to Rainbow Bridge last time we were there. Lake Powell is really fun for recreation and for sightseeing.
Just for context, to drive from Hoover Dam over to Lake Powell on the east side is about a 6-hour drive. Now, the other thing is the national park itself. So Grand Canyon National Park is both the South Rim and the North Rim. And these are only separated by about 10 miles from each other as the crow flies, but again, 4 hours to drive around the entire Grand Canyon to get from the South Rim to the North Rim. The national park, from both views, they both look into the same section of the canyon, essentially. Okay, the other thing to add into this road trip is Las Vegas. This is kind of the jumping off point for most people. This is where you would fly into. I enjoy Vegas for about a night or two. I think it's pretty fun. I'm not a party animal either at all. We're family people. We got 4 kids and we're not drinkers, but I still enjoy Vegas because it's so dang unique.
And they have some pretty cool museums. Yes.
It's fun. Vegas is fun. We've done this road trip, by the way, twice, going around the entire Grand Canyon. And last time was probably my favorite experience, which was rafting around Horseshoe Bend. Horseshoe Bend is a famous bend in the river with a viewpoint and all that you see from above, but you can actually go down on the river and raft around Horseshoe Bend. This is in a beautiful canyon, and I just thought it was fantastic, like being there on the water with the canyon walls. Incredible.
And I wanted to share that I was wrong about the Grand Canyon. Growing up, I always thought the Grand Canyon was just a pretty, you just go look at the Grand Canyon. But we have discovered over our years visiting that it's a fun place to visit. It's not boring. It is fun. I have ridden mules at the North and South Rim. That mules are magnificent animals. A mule ride is wonderful. And I didn't go to the bottom of the canyon, just on the vista. But oh my gosh, so pretty. We rode the Grand Canyon Railway, which was a really fun like blast from the past. And then we rented e-bikes and rode along the rim at the South Rim. What a great way to experience the Grand Canyon, just riding your bike around and those views everywhere you look. Grand Canyon is awesome.
In order to do the entire Grand Canyon, circle around it like we did, it takes about a week. That's how big the Grand Canyon is. It's incredible. All right, up next is the Great American Road Trip. That's what I'm calling this road trip because I think it's incredible. So this is Yellowstone and Grand Teton, but then you add in the Black Hills of South Dakota. So this is a really cool trifecta to do.
Most people know the Black Hills as its other more popular attraction, which is Mount Rushmore. So you can see the president's faces in there, but that is not all there is to do at the Black Hills.
So don't think just Yellowstone and Teton for the wildlife. The Black Hills also has wildlife. In fact, one of our very best buffalo sightings we ever saw was at Custer State Park in the Black Hills. So plenty of wildlife there. They have wild donkeys that you can feed as you drive around the wildlife loop. So that's pretty cool too.
Yes, and it's got some incredible drives where you were driving through granite spires and through these narrow tunnels, winding roads, like very cool, very scenic.
Now, what's interesting about the Black Hills is there are 6 national park sites. So Mount Rushmore is a national memorial, I think, but you have Badlands National Park, Wind Cave National Park, Jewel Cave, Minuteman, Devil's Tower. So a lot of really special sites in the Black Hills.
And they have the 1880 train ride, which we've actually been on a couple of times. And it's very authentic, very old, very scenic.
And then one thing you'll get with this trifecta here is some pretty cool Western towns. So you're going to get Deadwood in the Black Hills. famous Old West, Gold Rush town. You get Cody, Wyoming, just outside of Yellowstone, and then you get Jackson, Wyoming, just outside of Grand Teton. So these provide kind of all the cowboy experiences that you're looking for. So maybe this is like the great American Western road trip.
I always thought I hated Deadwood because I'd never done Deadwood properly. But this time we figured it out. We did a lot of research before we went, and we got the Deadwood passport, and it had all sorts of fun activities in it. And we just went around town. We watched the shootouts, the trial of Jack McCall. I mean, Deadwood is a fun, happening place that really caters towards tourists and families and just giving them a good time in their cool Old West town.
That was fun. Yeah, it was good. And my favorite memory of the Black Hills is the first time I drove the Needles Highway. This is a pretty famous drive in the Black Hills that goes through these formations called the Needles. And oh my gosh, this is one of my favorite drives ever. And you're going through all these tunnels and crazy formations. And then we pulled off, and my daughter and I kind of scrambled up on the hillside. And oh man, just is such a cool area. How much time to spend on this big road trip with the Black Hills, Yellowstone, and Grand Teton? And I'm saying about 2 weeks. And that's because each one is worthy of 3 to 4 days. And then there's about a day to connect to each of them.
If you are wanting to do one of these road trips for yourselves, we have got some great resources for you. We have written 15 itineraries for the national parks in the West that include connecting days to the closest national park so you can make a big road trip out of it. And you can find those on we'reintherockies.com.
All right, up next is the ultimate Rocky Mountain High road trip. This is a road trip through the entire western half of the state of Colorado through all the great Colorado Rockies. And I have to say, I love this road trip. We've done it a couple of times.
All right, so what you're going to see. First of all, there are 4 national parks on this road trip: Mesa Verde, Rocky Mountain, Black Canyon of the Gunnison, and Great Sand Dunes. You can catch all of those.
Yeah, and those actually might not even be the most interesting parts of the road trip. So there are also several mountain towns that are pretty fun. So it's one thing you don't get a lot with the national parks is where you get kind of some fun town activities and good restaurants and things like that. So we always say in Colorado, all the mountain towns are competing for tourists. So they're always trying to kind of one up each other and get you to come to their town.
Next are just unbelievable mountain views and valleys. I mean, you are seeing several 14ers. Looking down, we've been in the fall, the golden aspens everywhere in Colorado.
That's insane.
Just, it's something else. Love it so much.
And then you get a lot more options for fun in Colorado than you do a lot of the national parks. And we love our national parks, but like in Colorado, they have several train rides that you can do through the mountains. They have, like, every town, it seems like, has hot springs, like natural hot springs that you can sit in. There's gondolas that are taking you to the top of the mountain because they'll have ski resorts. And then there's these 14ers, these mountain peaks that are 14,000 feet high that you can drive up to the top. So some really kind of unique Colorado experiences.
And we've taken our family ziplining. Our kids still talk about that. It was so cool.
ATVing, horseback riding.
Yes.
There's so much to do in Colorado.
All right, so favorite experiences. I want to talk to you about Pikes Peak. That's one of the tallest, that's the tallest peak you can drive to.
Mount Evans by 20 feet.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, they're both right there.
We've been to both of them.
And they're both in Colorado.
Yeah, but you drive to the top of Pikes Peak and oh my gosh, the high altitude, it's crazy, crazy, crazy. And they've got some really cool visitor centers and place to eat up there. You can get the donuts. And then they have the cog train, which was so cool. I cheated. I rode up with Matt and then I took the cog train down. And I love that cog train. I mean, that is steep and you were just going down. I saw animals. I saw great views of the mountains.
So she rode the train down and I rode my brakes down the hill. So my favorite experience in Colorado is the Durango Silverton train ride. Now we've been on quite a few train rides since we've been doing this YouTube channel and all that. And this, I just don't see how it could get any better than the Durango Silverton train. This was fantastic. It goes through my favorite section of Colorado, the San Juan Mountains, and it ends at a really cool Old West town, Silverton. The ride is just stunningly gorgeous the entire time. And we went there in the fall with the golden leaves. So, if you could do that, that's a must do. Again, I would say about 2 weeks. You could maybe squeeze it down to 10, but it's a lot of, driving from point to point and then a lot of windy roads through the mountains. So I would try to give yourself 2 weeks to do that trip. And it's worth it.
Next up is our Grizzly Bear Parks trip. Okay, if you want to see some grizzlies, some black bears, we recommend Yellowstone, Grand Teton, Glacier, and Waterton.
Instead of teaming out with the Black Hills, you're going north and teaming up with Glacier and Waterton Lakes National Parks. Waterton is like the Canadian side of Glacier, so those two are hooked together. And all the grizzlies in America, well, in the lower 48 states, are in these parks essentially, or at least in their ecosystems. So they might be near the parks and in the parks. So Glacier, Yellowstone, Teton, that's where you're going to find grizzly bears in the lower 48 states.
And we think that, like, especially Glacier and Waterton are very good places to see bears. We get asked all the time, like, is it safe to visit these parks? And I always say, oh, Yellowstone and Grand Teton, you are fine. If you're like the normal touristy areas, you're good. But Glacier and Waterton, I white knuckle my bear spray around there. I feel like we run into bears at times when we don't expect them sometimes.
Yeah, in Glacier, the valleys are more narrow, where Yellowstone has these like wide open valleys that they roam all over the place, but they're more narrow in Glacier. You're more likely to run into them while you're out hiking on the trail. We've seen probably more grizzlies up in those two parks than maybe Yellowstone.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not sure. Now, there's also plenty of black bears in all those parks, and our favorite memory, that was also kind of a scary memory, was we were hiking in Mini Glacier, and twice on the same hiking trail, we ran into bears. Like, literally came around the corner, and once the little cub ran right in front of me, about 10 feet in front of me. And then the other time we saw this bear feeding on the berries.
And we told the ranger about it. They're like, okay.
That's the way it is in Glacier. There's bears. You're going to run into them most likely. So great place to see them. Yeah, if you're coming out to Yellowstone and Teton specifically to see the bears, try to add on Glacier and even Waterton. All right, how long to spend for that? Well, probably about a week and a half. So we said maybe about a week for Yellowstone and Teton. To get up to Glacier is about a day's drive, it's like 7 hours, and then you want to add some time for Glacier and Waterton. So about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks if you really just want to camp out and see wildlife.
Next up is a Canadian Rockies road trip. So we're going to start in Glacier, and then we're going to head up north and hit Banff and Jasper in Canada. Oh my goodness. This is probably heaven on earth. One of the most beautiful trips you will ever go on.
Yeah, so these are all considered Canadian Rockies, even though Glacier's in America. These are all considered part of the Canadian Rocky Mountain Range, and they are a little different than the American Rockies that you see in like Colorado. These are formed by glaciers, so they're much more just jagged and spiky and spectacular. And so what you're going to see is like 4 to 6 different national parks. There's Glacier, Waterton, Banff, Jasper, Yoho, Kootenai.
What Banff and Glacier are famous for are their turquoise lake. Okay, I saw a picture of Lake Louise and thought, I have to go there. That was like one of the biggest reasons we went, was just, I'm like, I have to see this beautiful place with my own eyes, because I'm not sure it actually exists. And it does. And you see these just turquoise lakes in all of these parks, and just stunningly beautiful. Those pictures do it justice. Like, it really looks like that.
The other thing you're going to see is some incredible lodges. So if you want to stay in some pretty cool places, this is a great trip for you. Banff and Jasper have some really fancy hotels that you can stay at, like the Banff Springs Hotel or the Lake Louise Chateau. Glacier has several kind of more rustic lodges that you can stay in. Even Waterton Lakes has, like, probably my favorite hotel I've ever stayed in, the Prince of Wales Hotel that overlooks the lake there. I mean, these are really cool. And we've stayed in all the lodges in Glacier and at Waterton. We have not spent the money to stay at the ones in Banff, but
yeah.
These are really, really cool experiences. So yeah, if you want a nice place to stay in the Rockies, ooh, this is cool. Okay, so our favorite experiences here. So I was going to say going to the sun road. This is a famous drive in Glacier where it does feel like you're driving to the sun, and it is breathtaking. But then actually I'm going to add on one, which is the Grinnell Lake, the Grinnell Glacier hike. That's where you see the turquoise Grinnell Lake, and you get up to the glacier, and the mountains are just the best ever.
And we saw so many wildflowers when we were there. I mean, it was a difficult hike, over 7 miles, but oh my gosh, I would do it again in a heartbeat. Loved it. And then one of my favorites was taking the Moline Lake boat cruise in Jasper National Park. Jasper is such a special place. After the hustle and bustle of Banff, it's nice to get into more remote wilderness, and you get on the boats on the Moline Canyon. And I just remember our tour guide had the most amazing stories. We saw bald eagles in the trees. Oh man. And just when we went out to Spirit Island, like, it was just a beautiful experience. So scenic, and just the mountains. Loved it.
Yep. How much time you need for a road trip like this? About a week and a half, I'd say, to do it pretty good justice. All right, up next is the best of the Pacific Northwest. That's what we're calling this road trip. I did this myself last year. Had just an amazing time. Cheryl stayed at home with the kids, so I'm going to talk about this one a little bit here. So kind of the big thing that you'll see here is 2 big national parks, which is Olympic National Park and Mount Rainier. And we're talking about mountains, and let me tell you, the mountains there in Washington are awesome as well. And these 2 parks, Mount Rainier and Olympic, form like a spectacular 1-2 punch that's pretty much equivalent to Yellowstone and Grand Teton, I would say. These are incredible. Mount Rainier is what makes Mount Rainier amazing. We talked about the 14 like 14,000 foot peaks in Colorado, but they're already starting out at like 6 or 7,000 feet or whatever. Mount Rainier starts pretty much at 0, goes up to 14,000 feet. It's just breathtaking. I mean, it dwarfs the mountain ranges nearby. It's crazy to wrap my mind around Mount Rainier. It is really spectacular. The other thing you're going to get with this road trip is some insane variety. Like Olympic National Park has mountains, really good mountains, but then also rainforests and beaches. And I thought the beaches were so cool they were just like really pristine, and they're part of the national park, so they're not commercialized or anything like that. And I did a bunch of tide pooling where I found all the little sea creatures in the pools. Really, really neat road trip there with the variety. And then the other thing you're going to see in the Pacific Northwest that is real famous for is the waterfalls. So I also went to the Columbia River Gorge and saw Multnomah Falls, the famous one that's over 600 feet tall. But then there's several other waterfalls throughout there. So really, it's such a unique area because you have these mountains, these volcanic mountains like Mount Hood and Mount Rainier, but then you also have like the coastline, and wow, that, I gotta say, that really was a special road trip. I loved it.
Every time he talks about it, it's like salt in the wound that I missed it.
I
want to go back. I want to go there so bad.
I have to take her back there. So for sure. My memorable experience was the Mount Fremont Lookout hike. This is a hike at Mount Rainier that just goes out on this kind of sheer ledge of a mountain as you're walking out, and then you get to this fire tower lookout. You can't go on the lookout, but just like the views from the lookout are insane. And again, Mount Rainier is just towering over you the whole time. Just an amazing mountain.
Next up is the Red Rock to Rockies road trip. So what you do on this is you fly into Denver, you drive through Colorado, you do Utah's 5 national parks, and then you end your trip in Las Vegas. I mean, this is seeing some real diversity of scenery. You get those mountains of Colorado, oh my goodness, and then beautiful Utah Red Rock, and then some fun Las Vegas. Yep. And when I think about this trip, I think about Rocky Mountain National Park. I love the elk there, especially in the fall when they bugle. It's something else. I mean, it is a show that they put on. Mm-hmm. There are dozens of elk. They'll all be congregated, and you can hear them all. And it's just fun to gather around and listen and watch. And then when you get into Utah on the Mighty 5, desert hikes are my very favorite. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Yeah. If I get to do a desert hike in the morning, I am like on cloud 9. Love it. Yeah. So yeah, I just love that you can do the wildlife and then the beautiful desert hiking. It's a great trip.
And the fall and the elk bugling is in late September in Rocky Mountain National Park. And that's a good time to do this whole road trip because then the Utah National Parks are really hot during the summer. So late September is a pretty good time to do this whole thing. In each of these states, they have what they call all-American roads. These are actually a road designation that just means this is such a cool scenic drive that it's a thing. You have to go do this just to do it because it's an attraction in and of itself. And so in Rocky Mountain National Park, they have the Trail Ridge Road, which gets up high up on the mountains, 12,000 feet high, and rides for several miles and is just unforgettable, really, really memorable. And then in Utah, kind of a little hidden gem, that connects 2 of the national parks. There's a road called Route 12, and this goes through Red Rock Wonders. So these 2 drives are just so spectacular, and so you're just going to get so much insane scenery by doing this road trip. All right, now if you want to experience these road trips, we have several videos that will take you through it. Just click the video icon on your screen there. It'll take you to the playlist, and you can choose which one you want to watch.
Thanks for watching, and have an amazing day.